Hello everyone and welcome to my 50k plus Magicka Necromancer build. I did do this build on the PTS and I have now played it in open world PvP, and man, it's quite strong. It is quite strong. It has really good damage, really good healing power, and really good sustain. It's surprisingly bulky and, well, quite good against just taking a lot of incoming pressure and able to turn around and hit your opponent with a really big smack. Now, I of course have made a few changes to this build since the PTS iteration, like I told you guys, and well, I like it a lot better with the changes I made on live. I think this build is fantastic for just all-around PvP and ESO. The only thing that I think this build is kind of lacking is it's a little bit on the slower side. So if you do want to add some Swift to the build, especially if you want to play it solo, I think that would help it out a little bit. But without further ado, guys, let's take a look at that build. For the race on this build, I've gone with Breton. I think for a Magicka build in general, Breton is pretty much the all-around best race. I think Khajiit could also work well with this build due to the crit damage bonus that it gets. Necromancer has a fairly high crit rate offensively and defensively thanks to its passive, so that's why I say Khajiit could be a good option. High Elf, of course, could work too, but you will have to make some changes to your build to make it function properly. I think for the sake of this build, though, Breton is definitely the best race choice. Now, taking a look at our attributes, we have got everything into maximum magicka. When we take a peek at the max stat on this build, we've got nearly 53k magicka, 25.2k health, and 11.6k stamina. So nice max stats for this spec. A few changes from the iteration I did on the PTS. You'll notice that both the magicka health and stamina are a little bit lower, and the reason I did this is just to pack a little bit more sustain on the build because of a food change up. I think the stam sustain on this spec is really fantastic, and we've made some weapon switch out and we've made some ability switch outs that allow us to work with a smaller stam pool. So I think that this is an appropriate amount. I wouldn't go below 11k stamina on this spec. If you're playing this in no CP, you're going to need to pack on a few more tri-stat glyphs, I think, so that you can have the stam you need to work with. Now, that whopping magicka pool, of course, is going to be the source of our damage on this build, which is really important. That paired with our high penetration is really the best way to go for a necromancer, especially since we're foregoing the spell damage buff. This is a great way to build it, I think. Now, taking a look at the regen on this spec, I'm going to fully buff and summon the pet so you guys can see 2,300 magicka recovery, 900 health recovery, and almost 1,200 stamina recovery. Absolutely fantastic sustain across the board on this build. Just great sustain everywhere. Now, something I want to mention is that our stam recovery is actually a little bit higher than that because we're running the Mortal Coil skill. This is the equivalent of around 300 stamina recovery. So we're sitting at around 1,500 stam recovery as long as we keep our Mortal Coil up. And on this build, it's the only corpse consuming skill we use, so you should be able to keep it up a majority of the time. Now, of course, our spell damage and our spell crit on the front bar, not a lot of spell damage. Now, we are running the infused frost staff on the back bar, so fully buffed, we get almost to 2k spell damage on this spec. The 42.8% crit, also really nice. Necro is going to get a huge amount of critical bonus as your opponent's health begins to drop, so you have a 70% crit chance plus on the front bar when your opponent's in execute range, and then of course they get a bonus to their heals with an increased crit chance depending on your missing health too. So really nice to have some crit on the Necromancer. I think light armor makes a lot of sense, and medium armor if you go for a stam build, just because you take a lot of advantage of those critical passives. Now, taking a look at the resistances on this build, yeah, we are not crazy bulky. We're going to be on the frost staff back bar, so we have the higher resist values. 20k physical resistance, 22.5k spell resist, and then our crit resist is coming in at 2,500 on this spec. These aren't crazy high, but we don't need to have super high resistance on this build. We have a really big 13k almost damage shield and a really strong amount of healing over time on this spec, so we don't really rely on having huge resistances to stay alive. We more of just have a big hit point burst cushion and a lot of heals over time if anything gets through that shield. Now, taking a look at the Mundus we're running, I've got the Mage on here. The Mage, of course, is going to increase our outgoing damage and healing by increasing our max mag. For the spec that we're doing, this just makes the most sense for the Mundus. And then for the food, I've got the Clockwork Citrus Fillet now. I switched this out from the Tri-Stat food from the last build, and I think it's because the Stam Sustain is so good, we don't really need to worry about it. It will, of course, take you some time if you're used to playing with a larger stam pool to get used to the smaller stam pool, But yeah, 1500 stamina recovery on this spec. We really don't need a huge stam pool on the mag build. And this health recovery that it gives is quite worthwhile too. I've always said this, in PvP, health recovery is the one source of healing that is not halved by battle spirit. So really valuable for PvP. It makes this food worth the bang for its buck. That being said, out of all the gold foods, the Clockwork Citrus Fillet is not on the more expensive side. The stamina food is more expensive, so I would highly recommend for PvP you go for this. You can, of course, go for the Witch Mother's Potent Brew if you can't afford this bad boy. And then for the potions we're using on this build, I have got the Crown Tri-Restoration Potions. And you can, of course, craft these yourselves. I'm just on the PTS, so I use these potions as kind of the placeholder. It's going to restore all resources and give you all recovery buffs. Necro has great base recovery. And, of course, we're utilizing the health recovery, too. So really fantastic for this build sustain-wise. And a bit of healing power, too, if we need a little bit of an extra heal. Now let's take a look at the sets we're using on this build. There have been no changes to the sets from last patch, save one, and that's only if you're going to play this build and you don't have your maxed Undaunted. Your Undaunted passives, if you guys don't know, increase your maximum stat by up to 6% when you have one of each type of armor equipped. So I have 1 medium, 1 heavy, and 5 light on this build, so we get the 6% bonus to all our max stats on this spec. So because we have this passive and we're playing a Max Magicka build, it helps it out quite a lot. So the first set that we're going to take a look at is actually the Crafty Alfiq set. And this is one of our Max Mag sets that we're using. It's going to give you just Max Magicka and then the 5-piece even more Maximum Magicka. Now, if you don't have your Undaunted passives, I would recommend switching this out for the Spinner set. It's going to give you less Max Mag, so you have a little bit less healing power, but the extra penetration it gives will allow you to still have the burst of the Crafty Alfiq build until you get the Undaunted to finally switch out to the Crafty Alfiq set. So in the footage that I had, I was actually playing with the Spinner set because I don't have the Undaunted on the live server. But on the PTS, I did want to show you guys the maxed out build and what kind of stats you want to look at when you finished leveling up your Necromancer fully. Now, the next set that we have is Necropotence. It's the same as Crafty Alfiq, just lots of Max Magicka. Necropotence, of course, requires us to have a pet active to get the bonus. We have Blast Bones and we have the Intensive Mender. These are both pets that will give us the Necromancer bonus, so really good for that. And then finally, we've got the Slimecraw Mask set on, and this is going to give us a little bit of spell crit and, of course, that Minor Berserk. The Minor Berserk, so fantastic for a build like this. A really great damage buff, and we're playing a pretty heavy burst build, so it's just going to help us push our damage even further on this spec. Now, for the weapons, guys, our backbar weapon is a Frost Staff now versus the old version of this build when I had a Restoration Staff. This is great for a couple reasons. In the old build, we didn't really need the Resto Staff. We had enough Mag Sustain that the heavy attack wasn't super important, and switching to the Frost Staff actually allows us to have a Magicka costing block, which is going to put even less stress on our Stamina Sustain on this build too, so we can have really awesome Stam Sustain and protect our Stamina bar by blocking on the Frost Staff bar. I've gone with Infused on this weapon with the weapon spell damage enchant. It's just going to be an extra bit of a boost to your damage and your healing from the back bar, translating over to that front bar when you swap, so really nice for that reason too. Now on the front weapon, we've gone with Sharpened. Sharpened is going to be the best damage increasing trait for a weapon in PvP. Penetration is just the best way to increase your damage in this game, and I actually didn't go with Nirnhoned because we have foregone the spell damage buff, so Nirnhoned would be a much worse choice than Sharpened here, I think, and we can't go Max Magicka on the weapon trait, so yeah, this made the most sense, especially on a Magicka build. We're going to be rocking pretty good penetration on this spec. I think we've got around 14 to almost 15k penetration on this build, so really good for that. Now, the shock damage enchant, I think, is also a great option because it has a chance to apply minor vulnerability, which is just going to increase the damage you do to your opponent by 8%, giving you even more burst on this build. And then for the jewelry, guys, it is full arcane with the Magicka recovery on 2 of them and a stamina recovery on the last piece. I think the 1 stam recovery is important just to give you that stam sustain that you need to make sure you have enough on this build. And then the mag recovery, of course, great for the sustain too. We didn't go for spell damage here yet again because we're doing the max mag stacking build and we don't have that spell damage buff, so yeah, it kind of made sense to just get our sustain on the enchants here. And then the full arcane, of course, important for that max mag stack. Now, the gear traits, guys, we have gone with a mix of impenetrable and 2 well-fitted. So 5 impen, 2 well-fitted. Really great for a build like this. You actually don't have to run the well-fitted if you don't want to, but I like to roll a lot, so I put the 2 well-fitted on for myself. And, of course, it helps for sprinting as well. But you can go for 7 out of 7 impen if you want to go that route too. Just add a little bit more bulk to this build. At the cost of course, your stam sustain just a bit. Now, taking a look at the enchants, I've gone with the Tri-Stat Hacky Joes on the big pieces and maximum Magicka on the little pieces. I think this is the best way to go. The extra health and stamina that we get from these glyphs is really important, and our shield size is actually perfect for our health value, so we don't need to push higher max mag to get a bigger shield on this build. We have our shield, of course, capped by 50% of our max health, so this helps balance out that aspect of our stats as well in the long run. So let's take a look at the skills we're using on this build, and there are a few changes from the original build I did on the PTS. And yeah, I playtested this build for probably 10 plus hours, and I really liked the changes and skills that I did, and I enjoyed it. Actually slightly different from what I thought I'd like on the PTS. So the first big change is that I'm running Ricochet Skull as the primary spammable instead of Force Pulse. The Ricochet Skull does a lot of damage. It, of course, has the splash on the third cast and the 20% increased damage, so it's a really good burst skill. And then finally, the last big reason I wanted to go for the Skull is because it is a Gravelord skill, and having a Gravelord skill slotted gives us 10% more crit chance per skill slotted against an opponent below 25% HP, so it just gives us better execute on this build, giving us a better chance of closing in for the kill when we get that opportunity. Now, you can, of course, still go for Force Pulse here. Force Pulse is a great option because of that snappy animation cancel, but the damage tooltip is a little bit lower, and of course, you don't get that bonus crit, so it's totally up to you what you want to go for here. I thought I wouldn't like the Ricochet Skull because it is a little slower of a projectile, but the damage it dealt made it worthwhile, I think. Time it well with this stun, it was still a really great skill. Now, the next skill that I've got is Flame Reach. This, of course, is going to be the primary stun for the build. It's going to have the upfront damage and the damage over time portion, and it's flame damage, so it has a chance of applying the burning status for a little bit of extra damage over time. It's going to knock your opponent back as well, so you can knock people off edges with this skill, which is fairly useful in PvP, I think, so it is worth mentioning, but pretty much just the primary stun combo setter for this build. Now, the next ability we have is Dampen Magic, coming in at a whopping 9k damage shield. If we buff up with the pet, we're just shy of the 10k value, giving us just shy of a 13k damage shield. This pairs up really nice with our hit points, so we get exactly half of our max hit points in damage shield when we use this. And we actually have Psijic on the back bar too, so if we block on our back bar, we get quite a lot of damage shield coverage on the Necro. So I would say about 15k damage shield on this build when we're blocking on the back bar, so really nice stuff for that reason. This is, of course, going to be your primary defense against incoming burst. On this build, you definitely want to keep your shield up as often as possible. I didn't go for the other morph because we have such great mag sustain. We can afford to keep the Dampen Magic up, and it's going to make you very resistant when you keep it up with your heals over time. As long as you keep your cycle down, it makes it hard for opponents to kill you until they really start to pile up and apply a lot of damage. Now, if you, of course, are going for the Spinners variant of this build, and you're using the damage shield here, you're going to have lower maximum Magicka because you don't have the Undaunted and you're not running the crafty Alfiq. I would recommend instead of running 511 then, you go for full 7-piece light armor on the Spinners variant. It's just going to keep your damage shield high. Your heals are going to be a little bit lower too, but that bigger damage shield is what's going to be really important against preventing that incoming burst. So I think that's the defense that's worth going for the 7 light armor on the Spinners variant. Now, taking a look at the next skill, we have got Blast Bones, and yeah, this ability still has some problems on the live server, guys. We've got a nice beefy 15.3k tooltip, so we've gone down a little bit of damage from the last iteration of this build, but I think it's totally appropriate because of the extra sustain and survivability that we've gotten out of it. And man, Blast Bones is such a good burst skill. It increases in damage if it takes longer to get to the target, but sometimes Blast Bones is drunk and it just doesn't run at the target properly. It'll get next to the target and not explode and wait, or it just straight up won't even get to the target. It'll just move in between you and the target, not really knowing what it's doing. That being said, you know, I hope ZeniMax fixes this skill. It makes this build work really well when it works, but when it doesn't work, we just don't have good burst potential. So it kind of sucks because, well, I think if the skill worked properly, this build wouldn't struggle maybe as much as I did. And in the footage, you guys will see where we could have closed in on some kills and Blast Bones just didn't do it for us. That being said, you know, we've got another patch coming in very soon. I hope that they fix Blast Bones in the near future. I hope at least before this hits console, we see Blast Bones fix come in. But it's pretty much a very pivotal part of this build. It's what your burst is kind of set off of. So the next skill that we have is Inner Light. This is, of course, here for that spell crit bonus and the max magicka that it provides. 5% for the skill itself, 2% for being a Mage's Guild skill. So 7% max mag for slotting this here. Really great for the max mag spec that we're playing. And then the crit is just great because we are, of course, a Necromancer. The bonus crit for damage and healing is so good. And then for the ultimate, guys, I've gone with the Glacial Colossus, the same as on the PTS. Really fantastic for world PvP. Not only does it deal a huge amount of damage over 3 seconds in the AoE field, you can cast it at a distance too, and it applies the major vulnerability for 30% additional damage against the opponent's hit. This is a huge deal. This is a huge amount of damage. It can really mess somebody up and a group of players, and you guys will see in the footage just how powerful this ultimate is. It does, of course, have that counterplay. If someone's aware that it's coming down, they can move out of it or block it and deal with it fairly well. So as long as you hit an opponent that's stunned or into a stun into the Glacial ultimate, I think that's the way to go for this build. Now, taking a look at our back bar, a few changes. Of course, we are on the Frost Staff now, so we don't have any Resto Staff skills like we did in the original build. The first skill we have is Mortal Coil, and this is going to siphon the life out of a corpse and heal you for 21k health over 12 seconds. We'll buff up so you guys can see the full tooltip on it. And there you go, 22.6k health over 12 seconds, a really strong heal over time. It, of course, requires a corpse on the ground for you to use it, so you have to siphon a corpse that's been created. And the siphon itself is great, but it does have some issues on the live server. You can line of sight your own siphon, and sometimes it doesn't work when you try to siphon a corpse if there's a little bit of a weird terrain where the corpse was created. That's just kind of a bug with Necromancer. Again, I feel like if this worked a little bit more reliably, it would feel a lot better, but even though it sometimes doesn't work, it was still a fantastic skill. The stamina restore from it is really great for this build. Yeah. What can I say? That's 300 stamina recovery as long as we keep siphoning the corpse. This is a big reason why we can get away with that smaller stamina pool. And then finally, while slotted, we get a little bit of a bonus to our healing done, which is fantastic because we're going to be doing a lot of blocking on the back bar, and blocking and healing is pretty OP. Now, taking a look at our next skill, we have got the Intensive Mender, and this is, well, a beastie heal over time. On the live server, I'm playing the dumbed down version with spinners, of course, so the tooltip on this is around 6k, but if you have the crafty Alfiq with your Undaunted, a 7.3k tooltip on the heal over time every 2 seconds for the 8-second duration. This, of course, procs your Necromancer set as well, and it creates a corpse on death for you to perhaps siphon later with the Mortal Coil. Really, really strong heal over time, and look at that cost, 1337 magicka, really cheap stuff. That's what I'm talking about. So this skill here, you definitely want to keep up at all times. You can have your damage shield drop and have both your heals over time up, and you'll actually be okay. It's really tough for people to burst you down if you're sitting in both your heals. That being said, though, the damage shield plus the heal over time combo at all times makes you very durable and very hard for a single player or even 2 players to chew through your defenses on this build. Now, the next skill that we have is Race Against Time, and this is, of course, a really fantastic skill for PvP, and especially the Necromancer. Something that I didn't really anticipate about Magicka Necromancer is that it's so slow. It is really, really slow in world PvP, so Race Against Time is a really big skill that I think really puts this build together. If you don't have this ability, man, you got to go with something like Mist Form to get you that Expedition and that Snare and Immobilize immunity. So yeah, I went with Race Against Time for that crit damage bonus too that it gives. We get the increased movement speed, the crit damage, and of course the Snare Immobilize immunity for 2 seconds. Really fantastic skill for this build. It keeps us mobile, and it keeps us hitting hard as well. Yeah, keeps that slow necro moving. I think that's so important. World PvP speed is a really big deal, and being able to continually move around is also a big deal. So this is a huge must for the Necromancer. And then finally, the next skill that we've got is Hexproof. This is a really fantastic purge. It removes 4 negative effects and it costs 1800 health. And then while slotted, we have reduced cost on all our abilities, which is great, just giving us more durability on our back tank bar here. This paired with the 2 heals over time, we can pretty much spam Hexproof while our hots are on us, and it makes us very, very resistant to damage over time. Sorcerer's Curse, all of this stuff we have a really good counter to with this powerful purge. Hexproof plus a heal over time is really absolutely fantastic on the Necromancer. It really pulls this class together, I think, for me. Now, the next ability we have is the Summoner's Armor, and this is going to be your primary armor buff for the build. I went with the Summoner's Armor just to give us the reduced cost on the Mender and the Blast Bones. I think this is the way to go. You could go for the morph that pulls people into you when they use a ranged attack. That being said, you know, that morph is a little bit more useful if you have AoE and stuff, and this is a fairly single target focused Magicka Necromancer build, so I don't know if it's the best way to go, the Summoner's Armor, to be honest. I really liked it for the decreased cost, but there's a very cheap skills to begin with anyway. It's kind of up to you guys what you want to go with here, just suiting your own playstyle. And then for the ultimate, guys, we have got the Ravenous Goliath, and this is going to be the defensive ultimate of this build. While in Goliath form, we become very chunky. We gain a heal over time that just deals damage to everyone around us, heals us for the damage done. Really good stuff on this build. And then something to note about this ultimate is that when you activate it, just like the werewolf transformation, you gain temporary invincibility for about 1 second while you're transforming into the Goliath. This is really worth noting because it can help you survive a massive incoming slam from a group if you time your Goliath, and then all of a sudden you're healing off of everybody around you, and you can have some real durability on this spec using this ability. Alright, so let's take a look at the champion points on this build, guys. So we're going to start off in the green tree here. In the tower, we've got 51 Warlord, 11 Sprinter, and 0 Bashing Focus. Huge focus on Warlord because that is primarily what our stamina pool is for pretty much breaking that stun. We're going to do some roll dodge as well on this build, but yeah. That's where most of the stam's going to go, is just breaking the incoming stuns when we get hit by them. The Sprinter's very important too, I think, because we have to stay mobile. You don't have to put a ton of points here, but just a little bit to help us. You know, this is like a well-fitted and a half pretty much, so not so bad. Taking a look at the Lover Tree, we've got 43 Mooncalf, 64 Arcanist, and 27 in Healthy. Big focus on Arcanist because that is our primary sustain, 2300 Magicka recovery. Yep, that's where it's coming from. And then Mooncalf, also a lot of points too. We've got a lot of stamina sustain, and we've got a little bit of health sustain, so we just want to make sure that we take advantage of that high regen that Necromancer has. Now, taking a look at the Shadow Tree, we've got 34 Tumbling and 40 in Shadow Ward. Just kind of an even split here. We've got a roll dodge, but the Shadow Ward, I think, is a little bit more important because we have that Frost Staff for blocking on our back bar. Really good combo with the Frost Staff to just have reduced cost of that block on top of it. Yeah, nice stuff. Now, taking a look at our blue tree, we've got 50 Spell Erosion, 49 Elemental, and 51 in Elfborn. A really even split here between the penetration, base damage, and the crit, just upping all of our outgoing damage, taking advantage of a good point spread there. And then in the Atronach tree, we've got 81 Mastered Arms and 39 Staff Expert. Now, I did a lot in the Atronach and put the Staff Expert here simply because I wanted to get that Tactician passive as well. I think the roll dodge to set an opponent off balance, regardless of build, is really, really nice in PvP, especially if we have 2 staves. So we have 2 ranged weapons. We can easily do a partial charged heavy attack to take advantage of that off balance and stun an opponent whose attack that we've dodged. We've got nothing in the ritual because, of course, we don't have any stam skills and no damage over time to speak of, so Thaum's not important. Taking a look at the steed, we got 51 Ironclad, 50 Resistant, and 20 in Spell Shield. A lot in Ironclad and Resistant just to bulk our defense against incoming direct damage, which most burst is, and then incoming crits, which is very common in PvP. So yeah, really good stats to dump a lot of points into. Spell Shield, we don't have a ton because we are a Breton and we're in light armor, but I just wanted to put a few points here for those front heavy points. And in the Lady Tree, we've got a 43, 43, 43, focusing on Hardy Elemental Defender, reducing our incoming damage from both physical and magical attacks. And then, of course, giving us some physical resistance, help making up for the fact that we're in light armor, giving us that 20k resist value on our back bar. And then in the Lord Tree, we've got 20 in Bastion for a little bit additional damage shield effectiveness. Now, you guys can adjust how many points you put here depending on how upgraded your gear is. Just make sure that you get a damage shield value relative to about half of your max health, and putting points in Bastion will help you adjust that accordingly. And that's the build, guys. All right, so let's jump into that PvP commentary. So, just a little heads up, guys. I was playing this without the Undaunted passives on the live server, so my max Magicka pool is going to be a little bit weaker, and my stam sustain, I think, is really what takes the hit if you don't have the Undaunted passives. It's a little bit trickier to sustain your stamina. That being said, yeah, I still enjoyed it a lot with the spinners combo. Even though we have a little bit weaker defenses, it still felt like a very powerful build, and if I had those Undaunted, man, I feel like it would feel even better on the live server. It'd feel really, really nice to play, especially open world, where we're just lacking that little bit of extra pepper at times. So without further ado, look at the tank on this build. We got a lot of blue players chasing us. We're just rotating our heals over time, our shields, and our expunge. And then we go into the Goliath to just save ourselves as we get piled on by this group. We got a lot of healing power coming in from that Goliath, so we're able to get away with just sitting that stun out. The Goliath, of course, just heals you based on how many opponents are around you. And just taking a lot of abuse from this group here. We finally are out of the Goliath transformation. Go for the race against time just to keep ourselves mobile. Get a little bit of a heavy attack there and just rotate our defenses yet again. We've got another nasty stun there, but we had the heal over time. We had the shield up. We were able to survive, and we just keep refreshing our damage shield as we let the Mender work away at our health bar. Still taking a lot of abuse from this yellow group here, the incoming leap as well, but we're just going to rotate those defenses and just flex our bulkiness on the Magicka Necromancer. Honestly, something that surprised me quite a bit was just how bulky you could be on the Mag Necro just by using those heals over time and that big damage shield. And you guys can see we're just able to tank out all this abuse from this enemy group here. Of course, making use of that race against time just to keep ourselves mobile and moving around here as well. But so far we haven't been able to really turn and do much offensively on this group, and I think that's just because, well, we had a lot of guys chasing us, so we had to get ourselves in a position where we could actually turn and do some fighting. And here we see we've got a good split on the group, a single player kind of overextending while the rest are just kind of behind him there. And we see the lower level, lower rank player in the back, so I go for some pressure on him right away, get good damage into him. He's pretty squishy. We can see the damage of this build right away, and we're just going to tether the body on the ground. Now, while we were doing the runaway there, I wasn't able to really utilize my stam tethers, and something interesting about this spec is that if you just camp around your bodies, you have better sustain and you're tankier, so you don't really want to emphasize moving around too much, I think, even especially if you think you can take the fight against two opponents like this, where I can easily deal with this damage and we can just try to start rotating. We went for the ultimate there, but unfortunately we just didn't land it in a good spot. That ultimate is honestly a pretty big move. It works really well, but you've got to put it in the right spot, otherwise you're not going to get what you want out of it. And there you see the Blast Bones was just a little hesitant going in on that enemy Templar there, and we weren't able to get the kill. I think if the Blast Bones had jumped, we could have got the burst on her there. But we're just going to keep those defenses up and just keep working on these guys here. I just continue to refresh the Blast Bones. There we see a nice big burst. We catch him with the stam down, but a huge leap from another Dragon Knight that's coming in here, and we're just kind of caught on the back pedal here. We don't have the Mender up. We finally get it up there, and we're just going to keep refreshing the damage shield, letting the Mender do its thing, going for the expunge as well. And yeah, doing our best to tank it out. I think the big mistake we made here is we didn't go for the tether on the body right away. We get caught with the stamina down, but honestly, had the Blast Bones killed the Templar a little sooner, we might not have been in that situation, but still a good fight nonetheless, just to show you guys a bit of the burst and, of course, the tankability of this build. Now, this next clip here, you can see that we're just coming into this fight here, just riding on our horse. A lot of AD snipers hitting us. We just keep our heals up and try to keep those damage shields up. There's a lot of pressure coming in. I go for the Goliath, a really great answer to a lot of snipes like that. And the Goliath just helps me deal quite a bit of damage to this player here. Hit him with a super hard Blast Bones as well. Down he goes, and we're just going to keep tanking out with the Goliath. This guy wants to go for the res here. We're going to stun him off the res and then just go for the pressure with our skulls, staying on top of him with the Goliath as well, just putting good pressure there, and Blast Bones does its job. Oh my gosh, a nice kill with the Blast Bones, and the other two Nightblades ended up going into stealth. One of them, I think, just fell off the edge there. He might have been injured or killed by another friendly player, but the other Nightblade, nonetheless, is still here. We're taking a little bit of damage from his shade, So we're just waiting for him to come back out of stealth. He opens up on this Templar here, and this other Nightblade ends up running off, but we've got more yellow players slowly riding into the fight, and we've got the Nightblade in the field as well. We go for pressure right away on this guy off the horse. She does not break the stun when we go for the Fire Staff knockback. Great ranged pressure there. We didn't even need the Blast Bones to put the damage in there, and we're just going to keep our shields up, keep our heals up, and continue to rotate on these guys. Get a good stun off on this Sork into the combo there. Nice big smack on her, and we're just going to tether our body, reset our armor, and wait by these bodies because I think there is still a Nightblade waiting in stealth for us here. So one of the enemy Nightblades ends up popping out, but he's just chilling, just being a friend. This guy here going for the res though, so we're going to put a bit of pressure into him, stop him from getting the res. He's going to go for his heals. We get him with the Blast Bones there, and with the Nightblade, I think the best way to deal with them on this build is just to constantly keep the Blast Bones up on them. So anytime they come out of stealth, they jump right on top of them, and there you see a huge Blast Bones combo, and this Nightblade right away on the back pedal here. Some other EP trying to chase him down as well. He reopens. We get him with the Blast Bones into the smack before the EP can jump on him. We managed to pick up that kill there too. And then for the last piece of footage for this build, guys, I have got a little bit of a tank fight into a 1vx. Now, I think this build is actually really fantastic for group PvP. The heal over time does heal your friends, and just the ultimates that it has a lot of group synergy. The major vulnerability makes it a really strong spike ult. And then, of course, we have the Goliath for tanking, and there you see, so close to death, so much healing coming in from the Goliath here. We're just going to rotate our buffs, go for the expunge as well, removing all of the negative effects that we can, and some EP players are going to come to the rescue on the side and hit these yellow, but we've got a lot more yellow players coming in here, and yeah, just doing our best to stay alive with that ultimate. Nice little tank out there, going for some pressure into the yellow players that we can hit, just trying to pick out some lower health targets. We catch this guy here in the crowd. He's got really low health. Unfortunately, it's another player in the Goliath ultimate, so we're doing nowhere near enough damage to take him down, and we're just going to kite our way out of this fight here and just see who will chase us behind these rocks. We don't want to wait too long. Like I said, necro is very slow, so the longer we wait in the field, the better chance that they all jump on top of us. So a nice little kite there, and we managed to pull a Stam DK off by himself here. And this guy right away is going to dot us up and just go for the stuns as well. We're going to respond with both our heals over time and set our tether down and just make sure that we use the expunge when he throws the dots on us. Honestly, on this build, if you have the hots up, it's very hard for a dot build to take you down. As long as you keep healing yourself, they're going to not apply very much pressure because their dot ticks just won't deal a lot if they only get one tick in. And on this guy here, we're just going to keep rotating Blast Bones. As soon as our Blast Bones are down, we're going to prioritize going for another Blast Bones if we can. He gets us with a really nice leap there, but we had the purge down and we had the healer up, so we managed to survive the leap. Just go for a few damage shields, channel some heavies off of him too. We're a little bit lower Magicka after doing all that tanking out earlier, and he just applying a lot of dot pressure, but we're doing a good job tanking this out. I think we got the potion coming back up, just gonna keep rotating those heals. We set our ultimate down and we get a great stun on him off into the ultimate, a huge combo there to bring him down. And we're just going to work our way back towards this big yellow group. And they're just slamming on the guys in the tower here. I see this guy on siege. We get him with the stun off the fire staff there. I go for some pepper with my attacks, but they respond with some siege shots of their own. I'm just not really trying to pick up a kill here, but just seeing who I can attract off to the side. We got a lot of pressure coming on us. We're just going to use our roll dodge there, kind of dance through the terrain a little bit, go for the purges as well, and just reset our shields and our buffs, and then see who chased us up here. Unfortunately, it was just a single Nightblade. He goes for the poison injection and then right back into stealth, hits us with the surprise attack out of stealth. We go for the Blast Bones combo on him, and we go for the stealth detect, but he ends up running off. So I just make my way back to the siege line. Of course, just keeping up all my buffs as I go. You really don't want to get ganked on any build, I think, in PvP. Keeping your buffs up, especially on a shield build, is important. And of course, we get a nice kill off on the player on siege there. He doesn't respond to it at all. And we're just going to keep rotating our heals and our shields and work our way back to the corner here while these yellow players chase us. And that is, unfortunately, all of the footage I have for you guys today. So thank you guys so much for watching. If If you like the video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button for more ESO content. I'm going to be doing a lot of work with the Magicka Necromancer, and I am actually in the process of leveling the Stam Necro right now too, so look forward to a lot more Necromancer stuff from me in the future, guys. Check me out on Twitch if you guys want to see some live gameplay. If you guys are interested in sending in clips for the top 5 battles or a build to be featured, you can send it in to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. And then finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 14 days. No credit card to sign up. So if you guys get really bad ping, give them a shot. And then, yeah, that's it, guys. I really enjoyed the Necromancer. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I look forward to doing more in the future. Of course, if you really love the show, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Have a great night, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.